Hello and welcome to this episode of the Vedic Conversation, where we invite our guests to talk about a number of different topics through the lens of storytelling and from the perspective of the Veda, an ancient but still very much relevant body of knowledge from India. I'm Anthony Thompson, a Vedic meditation teacher based in London, and I'm joined by my Vedic colleagues Derrick Yanford in New York and Rory Kinsella in Sydney. In this episode, our guest is Tim Angel, chairman of the world-renowned theatrical costumiers Angels, based here in London. Tim recounts the challenges of protecting this 7-generation-old business and the workforce of 120 people during the COVID lockdowns last year through perception, tenacity and creativity, which he attributes to his Vedic meditation practice. Let's get into this fascinating and amusing conversation. Don't forget to stick around until the end, where we'll share with you how you can become involved in the conversation. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much. That was a very good PR exercise. Thank you.
Well, it's all true, isn't it?
Yes, it's all absolutely true, except we've got 12 miles of
it's increased.
costume. 12, yes. No, it's if
12.
you lay them end to end, there's 12. So it's basically the distance from here to the centre of London, if they were all laid out in a straight line.
I had the pleasure some years ago of visiting your warehouse, and one of your sons very kindly showed me around, and it is the most astonishing sight. You had the racks kind of tiered. I think they were on a pulley system at that stage.
No. They were double hanging when you came. They're now treble hanging.
Treble hanging. Well, there you go. And it's like wandering through history. You can be amongst the uniforms of the Boer War, and then you can suddenly come across Downton Abbey, and then you can suddenly be amongst costumes for the Crown. It's the most extraordinary place. It's a sort of childhood dream in a sense. You could go crazy for fancy dress, but of course this is not fancy dress. This is very grown up material. Although you did, I'm right in thinking, have a fancy dress department, didn't you?
We still do, but that's for selling packet costumes. We do a bit of private hire. Yeah. And also what you've missed, Anthony, is that we're probably the largest food court to moths in the
Yeah, we want to hear all your tips on moths and molds.
Mold and moth, yeah.
Well, no, we have to fog our building fairly regularly, but unfortunately moths like
what you've got.
Clothes. So no, we're quite all right. We're not bad with moths. We're not bad.
I was told something absolutely fascinating about your private or your costume hire to the public when it comes to Halloween. Can you share with us the most popular costume that's taken out on that day?
Well, the funny thing is, unlike in America, I'm going to get there. Unlike America, Halloween, fancy dress in America is once a year. It's Halloween, and it disappears for the rest of the year. Here, it's more or less 20. It's 365 days. Halloween used to be things like ghouls and Dracula and all of those things, but now it's a variety of things, some of which I think are very risque. I mean, I don't run that side of the business. My daughter does. Completely anti-woke, although my kids are woke. I'm not. But the popular costumes, I mean, Anthony, I'm not sure this is the right place.
We have an adult audience.
Well, okay.
I'm sure you can couch it in French language.
Okay, we've got the easiest one's a hand sanitizer. I can't describe what it looks like, but that was in relationship to COVID. I mean, people. I think what we've found in the UK with packet costume is that people like I don't know, it seems to be younger men and younger women. It's sort of an age group between 18 and probably 40, and they want to be as provocative as possible. Now, the crazy thing is, all these people are probably extremely woke. Um, and if, for argument's sake, we were to have an Arab costume on the website, we'll get letters from, worried of Wokingham saying, how can you have an Arab? You can't. But people dress up, people have fun, and it's not actually, I don't think it's insulting, whatever. I mean, I'm Jewish. We've got a flashing rabbi. Now, so, it's, I don't quite get it, but I used to understand when we had our shop in Shaftesbury Avenue and people used to come in, because we hire upmarket costumes. The fancy dress market now is all about packet costumes. It's disposable, and they tend to follow the theme of the day, of the time. As I say, it's not my strongest point. But in the past, we used to do. Elton John always used to have a big Halloween party. There's an English TV host show called Jonathan Ross, and he has a huge Halloween party. And you get all the celebs coming in for that. And I think that's sort of happening at the moment to some extent here. But the main focus is on online with fancy dress.
I think when I visited you, Jeremy told me that at the time, and we're going back probably 6 or 7 years, that the most popular outfit for Halloween was a banana.
Oh, yes.
Dressing as a banana. I mean, I simply just don't get it unless they're sort of overtones.
I must tell you, the banana is not just Halloween all the time, and there are various different bananas. Again, some are fairly rude, but the main banana is, I don't understand it. I mean, I don't like dressing up. I've done it a few times, and I suppose it's because I think people, when they dress up, want to become someone else. I remember some time ago, we were involved in a party at Gleneagles, and it was for Johnson & Johnson. It was a corporate party, and they decided to get all their representatives from around the world to go to this party, and they were all allowed to suggest that they had to choose which costume they wanted to be. So you got, from Napoleon to Attila the Hun, or whatever it might have been, and they actually used that to work out. There was something that said about the psyche of each of the people, which is quite fascinating. So you're going to ask me what I dress up as. I don't know. I have been to a couple of fancy dress parties in my life. One was the Chelsea Arts Ball when it was at the Albert Hall, which was a very big party. And we were invited by Elizabeth Emanuel, who designed Princess Di's wedding dress. And she actually came in here and dressed me. And I went as a pirate, and it was quite incredible what she did. I mean, it was fun as well. So I enjoyed it.
Great stuff.
Tim, I have a question about a term or a word that you used, and I would love to hear your take on it, only because in 4 seasons of recording this term hasn't made its way into our podcast. And so I'm so interested to hear your take. So you've used the term woke. Yeah, a few times. What is your understanding of that term?
Listen, I'm 70 odd years old now. In my day, what's my understanding of it? Well, my kids, I don't know how I can explain it. Everything seems to be what you can't do. There's rules and regulations for everything. If you go to McDonald's, they always had on the packet, the inside's hot. Well, I mean, are you an idiot? Coffee cup, why do people need to be told that? And, people, you can't refer, I mean, there's certain things I completely agree with, but it's taken away everybody's sense of having fun. I mean, I have a family business, and you've asked me a question here, and I'm having great difficulty in answering. Maybe I should get my son to come in. We run a family business, and I'm told by my kids that certain things that I say to some of our staff I can't say, but the staff actually like it. The team know what I'm like, but those are the things now that you can. I'm trying to think. Anthony, help me. You've heard woke.
I ask because I feel like you used it in the context of what it means and how it's used. I'm so curious because
Right.
I'm 46 and I don't
Okay.
use that term.
And that word doesn't come up in America.
It does. It is no. It's very popular here. It's just not a word that I use. I hear it quite a bit.
I don't use it. I don't use it.
Okay.
And I'm my kids will tell you I'm completely the wrong one for
Well, the way that you used it sounds like you do have a really great understanding of it and how it's used. So I was just wondering if you had like a certain twist, but how you've described it.
I'll give you examples. You could have a rabbi. You could have a costume. You can have, but you can't call it a rabbi. You can have something that was an Indian, meaning a Native American outfit. You're not allowed to do now. Half the universities won't let people dress up in Chinese outfits because it's insulting to the Chinese. That's what woke is, I believe. And whilst I completely understand it, I just don't. I don't understand why society has got like this. I mean, yes, Donald Trump. I mean, the things that came out of his mouth were disgraceful. But we're grown-ups, we're adults. You should be able to make your own opinion, and I think kids should be able to make their own opinions. They should be able to think. I think a lot of people younger than you, Derrick. My kids call them the generation of the entitlement generation. And I think that generation feels that they're owed everything. They can be masters of the universe. They don't, sorry, I've got something in my throat. They don't, they want to start at the top, not learn their way up. You can't, again, woke is at the office. I think my behavior going back donkey's years was I am still very fiery, but I used to be incredibly fiery with my guys that worked here. Now, if I was like that today, I'd be had up for bullying, this, that, and the other. That all clicks into woke to me. And, bullying is wrong, but actually making someone do something. When I started work, I remember I was told to pack shelves. In those days, we put clothes in shelves, and there was a way of folding them. And you could get about 100 jackets into a small section. So I did this, and the guy that was teaching me came down, and he pulled everyone out on the floor and said, "This is a disgrace, do it again." And I did it again. I think he did it again. And the third time, I got everything right. If I did that today with anybody, they'd have me on unfair employment. Those are the things that are woke. No one wants to, I think, they live by a different set of rules. And I think it is rather sad because, whether my dad felt like this when I was much younger or not, but I really worry about where the world's going, and for my grandchildren, what a world to be brought up in. I mean, I think, all right, COVID hasn't helped. I've seen the effects of that with my grandchildren and schooling, and yet they're bombarded by, you can't do this, and this is wrong, and they're going to pull down this statue. And okay, people like Churchill. Okay, whatever Churchill did. But that again, wokeness is they want to pull down the statue of Churchill or change the name of a college, or Rhodes was apparently a slaver or involved in, I don't know if you've noticed Rhodes. And there's a university saying we don't want to call this place whatever under Rhodes' name. Now the problem is, yes, slavery was totally wrong, but that was then, and this guy made a lot of money out of it, and he's that money is going back to I don't know if I'm getting onto too touchy of ground, but I don't understand why you have to rewrite history. You know, history is history. What's happened from the American Civil War and everything else, you know, those events happened, and you can't just scrub them out of existence. I mean, Australia, you know, they're all descendants of convicts. You know, but
Rory
maybe no, I'm sure
I'm
not.
English,
But,
though.
He won't listen.
but you know, I think if I said that to a bunch of Australians, they'd probably, young Australians, they'd lynch me. But it's true. It was a, you know, for right or wrong, it was a penal colony. I mean, it must feel a bit like being there now, actually, because you're all locked in, aren't you?
We are. The COVID zero prison.
I can't give you an exact answer, but it's like it's like things when I was a kid we could say, and you can't say now.
That's a great answer. It's a really, really wonderful answer. And I will tell you too, and I'm really happy that we are having this conversation because we've never talked about it here, and I don't really talk about it amongst my friends. And I am in the process of kind of trying to understand what does it really mean. And it sounds a little bit like it's synonymous with cancel culture and holding people to a very high standard. The one thing that I will offer in the work that I'm doing, where from the events of the pandemic and the George Floyd murder that happened in America, that event made such a huge impact on me in the sense of I didn't really know how to respond to it. And all of the things that were born out of it and protest and what people's thoughts and feelings and emotions were, to me, was an invitation to re-examine what I think about the world and how it is being perceived. And in my journey to get a greater understanding, all of the things that you have said about time and history and what it was like when you were younger and what is like now, I think what the wokeness is about in its early days right now is an attempt to re-understand the other complexities of all of those things that aren't being examined because they maybe have only been seen from one perspective. But when we step back and look at it from a little bit larger, like I can say right now, what I'm very interested in is how the laws and the construct of which I live and operate in the United States are highly tied back to roots of white supremacy. And if I don't kind of integrate that into my way of looking at the world now, I am then kind of not able to tap into this consciousness that others are trying to say. Just pay attention to there are many stories of this history. It's not just the one that's being told to you or the one that's being perpetrated all the time, especially when it comes to textbooks or whatnot. So for me, and I love having this conversation, again, it's for me to kind of go, when I hear people speak about woke or you can or cannot say this, for me, it's like, okay, what is really at play? Maybe there's something I'm not quite understanding, and I just take that as an invitation to do the work for myself. And, you know, and we're going to make mistakes. Some people are going to hold us to a really maybe unattainable standard, and that's okay. And that's why it's great to have conversation like this and just discuss our own struggles with it. So I appreciate your candor and your explanation was gorgeous. So thank you so much.
That's okay.
Tim, you made a very interesting comment about how in the past you might have been more angry than you are today. Is it possible that you learning to meditate has moderated your behavior in that respect?
Okay. It's an interesting question. I think I've always, I'm fairly volatile, but I think you've got, if you're running a business and you're you know, like this, you've got to be like that. What I think I've learned over the years, and Vedic meditation eventually got me there, and I'll tell you the story of that. But roughly in the 1980s, I think I went to my doctor at the time because I was getting really worked up about things. And he wasn't one of these guys that said take pills. And this was 40 odd years ago. So, I mean, it was quite something. And I did something called autogenics, which was breathing. I mean, it's basically the basics of mindfulness or any of the things you do. And I did that, and I found it very useful because I could do it in the back of a cab, on the train, whatever. I could just switch off. I mean, I still exploded, but it did control me a bit. And then I tried all different sorts of things, like friends of ours told me about mindfulness, and I went on and I read some books by Andy Puddicombe, and I actually found it very, very interesting. And then how I got into Vedic meditation, I'm going around this in a very long way, Anthony, was that, like Watkins, I think in about, I don't know what date it was, it must be about 2017, there was an article in the Times, and I'd never heard of Vedic meditation, and it was about Meghan Markle, and it was that Light was teaching, you know, here is the new princess's guru, or whatever it said. And, you know, I looked him up, and it so happened he's coming over to London. So I thought, well, I'll go to an introductory talk. And that's really when I started getting involved with Vedic meditation. Has it made a difference to me? I think my wife and kids will probably say most of the time. Definitely, definitely at work. Yes, because I think I'm seeing things differently. I think, as Derrick just said, I think one of the things I do, which I never used to do, was see what people's problems are, why they trying to put myself where they were. Now, you know, but and you know what, I told you, Anthony, a story about how I know there's a difference. I mean, in I think about 2000, the year 2000, we were forced with moving out of our building in London and moving to Hendon. And if you can imagine having to plan moving a warehouse to another warehouse and still keep working with customers who are very selfish and they don't mind your move, you know, they want it tomorrow. So we had to work out how to do it. Anyway, everything started going wrong. I like things to be fairly linked up. I'm not a control freak, but I like, so everything went wrong. The removal firm screwed up. The builders were so behind. We moved in here with cement mixers and whatever. Anyway, and one evening, there's an actor in England called David Jason, and he was in a TV series that we'd done called Mr. Micawber. And we were watching this at home on a Sunday evening, and David Jason comes into this Victorian house, takes off his coat, his top coat, takes off his top hat, puts it on a hat stand, and I ran in the kitchen. And my wife said to me, "What are you doing? You know, what was wrong?" And anyway, I got myself into a terrible state, depressed, anxiety. I'd forgotten to allow any space for the hats. So it was that silly thing of the man taking off the hat. And I went down the tubes quickly. I ended up taking some pills. I had anxiety, depression. Anyway, the difference that, and I tell this in a very convoluted way, but Anthony knows where I'm going with this. Last year with COVID, we were looking, I mean, I suppose February, March, I sort of decided I could see what was coming. You know, for whatever reason, we'd have no work for a time, the place would close down. How am I going to, how my staff, how everyone going to survive? And I remember phoning my bank manager and saying, "Listen, I'm really worried because I can see us having no turnover for 4 months." And they said, "Don't be ridiculous." And I said, "Look, I reckon filming will shut down. I just think, and you know, if we have 4 months of nothing, we're losing, you know, millions of pounds. I'm worried." Anyway, I decided at that point that we'd shut down. This was before the government shut down, about a week before. All films and television had sort of stopped. The only thing that was going, which is ridiculous, all the way through COVID at the beginning of last year, was fancy dress. Even when Italy was in that dreadful crisis, we were sending costumes, fancy dress costumes, to Italy. Now, explain that to me. Anyway, I sort of was faced with a fact here, and I could see the figures from a spreadsheet. You know, God, we're going to have no business. All these people are not going to have a job. You know, 7 generations is going down the tube. And instead of, I think where I'm coming to here is, unlike the last time when everything went wrong and I didn't know how to deal with it, this time, and I actually think Vedic meditation actually really, really helped me, because I came up with a plan, and I think part of it came after or during when I was meditating. Different things came out. You know, when you lie there and all those thoughts are going through your head, we're going to go bust, this is going to go whatever. And I think I came out of one of those sessions. I'd say woke up, but Anthony will scream at me if I say that. If he knows what I mean. And I thought, well, okay, if it's going to be, it's going to be. But I don't want it to be like that. What can I do to stop it? And instead of being negative, you know, I think, and we got through it brilliantly. I mean, I think what we did here was fantastic. We were staring at about £5 or £6 million loss in turnover, you know, and thank God the government here did various things which were very useful. And then one of the things I was working on from the beginning was how when COVID, we can go back to work. Can we go back to work? And we started working out protocols and things here. And this was all while we were closed. And I think what Vedic meditation did for me completely during COVID, it was sort of like a hallelujah moment. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because that's not the sort of guy I am. But I think without it, and, you know, when people ask me about meditation and I tell them, you know, what it's done, it's given me much more clarity and a better perspective on how I deal with things, I think. But, you know, I think a lot of the success of how we came out of COVID as a company was helped greatly by Vedic meditation, because I think it gave me time to think. When I got into, you know, meditating twice a day was great, because in the morning you'd wake up having not slept and being screwed up about everything. I wasn't falling asleep, Anthony, and and I'd come out of it in the morning and think, right, well, I can't explain it, but, you know, yeah, it was like a eureka moment. So I think it has calmed me down. I'm still the same person I was. I'm not walking around, you know, chanting and throwing petals around. But
That's stage 2.
right, no, he's trying to get me to do that. Yes.
But Tim, you know, you were very creative during this very, very stressful moment. I know that you put in place, as you say, some new protocols. Do explain to us, share with us the protocol of when casts are coming in, when actors are coming into your warehouse to be fitted out with costumes with the costume director, because before it was very quick and easy. Now it's very complex.
Well, right at I mean, there were a couple of things that happened in England. I think that the government here actually, I think, had some direction from a business point of view. I think in America it was like a shambolic mess, but then you had a shambolic mess for a leader. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, of course. Say whatever you like.
What happened with COVID was, after it started, we had a shutdown, and we started working here on protocol. I can't tell you what. I like a disaster. I love a disaster. We had a fire once upon a time, and I see disasters as something to learn from. You know, out of it's like a phoenix rising from the ashes or whatever. And by the time with COVID, I got to this point with the meditation that, how am I going to put this right? We did certain things. I got in touch with the different unions. I got in touch with because of my connections with the Film Commission, who were responsible for film production, different people within the industry. And we came up, the whole industry came up with a set of protocols. And round about, I don't know, May, I think, the government took those protocols and they then said, film and television, providing you live by these rules, you can carry on making films. Why? I thought to myself, why does a government home in on film and television? That, as a special, forget you don't need to quarantine, you can. And there were two areas in England. One was Premier League football, soccer, which they gave permission to go ahead. And the other was TV and film. And the penny then dawned on me that the reason both of those, football, every night or every day there was a Premier League football match on, and it's big here. So what did that do? It kept all the people that were locked up, the fellas, I mean, I'm not being sexist here, but watching football. And film and television, the films were streamed onto telly, and people's social interaction. I mean, I don't know whether you guys watch TV or anything, or your families do, but, I know you could see that people were talking about what they'd watched. So if people had watched Bridgerton, they'd speak to someone else about Bridgerton, or this, or that, or the other. So I think that was quite clever, because by allowing, the Netflix and the Amazon Primes and all the other things to produce work, it kept people active. I mean, the number of people that have watched things on TV because they could read, but most people, probably don't read books. They couldn't go to the theatre. They couldn't go out at that point. So that became the focus. So the protocols, normally when we did a film or television, you get about 6 to 8 weeks notice. You'd arrange with the designer that people would come in and fit, try clothes on. The stuff would go out. Well, every production had COVID nurses on it. So if we were doing a Tom Cruise film, amongst others, and they all got COVID. They got COVID. They were filming in Italy at one point, and they got COVID. But if any of my staff were going to fit Derrick Yanford on a film, they would have to have a COVID test that day. Now, if that COVID test was negative, great. But if Rory Kinsella, the following day in a different production, had needed a fitting, this member of staff would have to have another COVID test, because film B wouldn't recognize film A. Mm. Yes. So my poor lot downstairs, I think, have had during that time had so many things stuck up their noses and down their throats that it was. But we then decided when we came back here, we'd also got in touch with the nurse, and at the beginning we thought, well, look, I want a safe building, and this is incredible. I mean, I think this building's the safest. I feel it's even safer than home. We insist that everybody, not the staff, we insist that anyone coming into the building has to produce a negative COVID test. We take their temperatures. We randomly now take 12 of our staff and do the proper tests. They've all got to do the piece. I get confused. The ones you do yourself in England.
Lateral flow.
Yeah, you don't have those in America or Australia, I think. But anyway, and we've, by and large, will be my famous last words, we've kept it out of here. And it's amazing because we've never been busier. That's the other thing. After the pandemic, TV and films just boomed. I mean, I'm sitting here looking out at my car park in the front, and it's absolutely packed, which is another thing I think I told Anthony. I don't know, you're saying, was I better for Vedic meditation? when I was on these pills after the, is this all right? Or
Yeah.
I was on pills. I saw, I was seeing someone. I suppose you call it a shrink. He wasn't a shrink, but anyway, he put me on tablets, and he said, "Look, I don't want you being on tablets. I think you should go to a cognitive therapist." So I thought, okay, I'll go to a cognitive therapist. So I went to this very nice person, cognitive therapist, told her my problems, and she said, "Well, what gets you going?" I said, "Well, I can be sitting in my office looking at the car park. There's no cars in there." So she said, "Okay, simple way to deal with that. Tell yourself when you're looking out the car park that all your customers and actors are coming in on public transport." So I took the message and came back to it, So I come in, I sit down, I'm getting myself in a state, I look out the window, I tell myself this, and I think, Jesus, this is ridiculous. None of these people even know what a bus looks like.
So Tom Cruise is on the bus as we speak.
Yeah, so that didn't work. Cognitive therapy didn't work. I have tried various things, and so yeah. Anyway, does that answer your question? Have I done a Tim and gone around the mulberry bush?
Yeah, I love the mulberry bush.
Okay.
It's great. You did answer the question. But just continuing with this point, what happens to the costumes when an actor comes in? You've probably got the same costume, but in 3 or 4 different sizes for the actor. They choose one, but they've tried on the other 3. Okay. What happens to the other 3? Do you have to clean them?
Since COVID.
Yeah.
Well, again, because we really don't sell very much. I'm doing a Tim, all right. We sell shows like we make and sell to things like Hamilton or Wicked, theatre-wise. We do that. On television and films, anything we make or do comes back into stock. So the process here is someone comes in for a fitting. They go into a fitting room do the fitting. The minute that fitting's finished, the clothes are then taken and isolated, and we use an ozone machine, which is probably, I don't know if it's dreadful for the atmosphere or not, but it's what a lot of the online shops would use. If you order clothes online and you send them back and they smell of cigarette smoke or curry, they can put the clothes into this machine. I mean, you don't see anything. It's just like a fridge, and all the smells go. So that works. We then had wands. We then have to disinfect the room, and any of the clothes, before they go into the ozone, I think they sit in a space that we've allocated, and we quarantine them for 2 or 3 days. Now, because we're in the business of sending clothes out and clothes coming back, anything we send out, so if we're sending a film out, they will quarantine those costumes when they get them. When they come back, before they can come into the building, we quarantine them. But if you think you've got 600 outfits, and if you take what any of you are wearing, you've got a shirt, trousers, shoes, whatever, there's a load of components that make up an outfit. Now, basically, they don't think that COVID can transmit through clothes, so I'm told. Everything's dry clean, but the difference is it's taking longer. We have, in that sense, we have less time. Films with their budgets and things are having to set aside a lot for COVID, for all these protocols they've got in place, the testing. I mean, one of the first productions we did coming out of lockdown last June was something called The Pursuit of Love, which was a 1930s production. And it was the first production after COVID, and they were all going to use this as an example. And how they did it with the filming was they actually took over Soho House, you've heard of Soho House in America or not? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they had a place called Babington House, which is a lovely, fashion manor with grounds, and it's 1930. Anyway, they took that over because obviously as a hotel, they won't allow people. They used it for filming, but they also put the cast and the staff in there. And by doing it that way and testing everything, they could see what worked and didn't. It has become an absolute nightmare. But you know, it's like everything. After a while, the cleaning, the sanitizing, the spaces, not sharing sewing machine. I mean, there are so many things in here that we've got going that are different. But hey, you know, they now become a norm. So I suppose that's a bit like meditating, isn't it?
So the one thing I want to reflect back to, Tim, and everything that you're saying is you're talking about these extremely challenging things and unexpected changes in demand, and you continue to step up and adapt to them. Because I haven't heard you say, yeah, I was done. I was going to give in. I was going to give it all up. You actually talked about having foresight about maybe this thing is going to happen, preparing for that. And then with the onslaught of all of this change, found your way through it, and you're still doing it. And you're talking about it right now. And I think one of the wonderful things about the power of consistent meditation practice is the experience that you are describing right now and how you have shown resilience throughout all of this. And if anything, the conversation inspires me. I mean, you've talked about some things, the amount that is like mind blowing to me. And if anything, it inspires me to go, the little things that I have to handle in my life, if this gentleman can do it like this, like I'm hearing, yeah, Derrick, you know what? Maybe you can change your perspective on how difficult there's not 600 pieces of a thing coming in and out of my life. You know what I mean? And I think that you're doing it very gracefully too, and you have a lot of humor, and you're just, I don't know. I just want to reflect back to you how beautiful it is, your experience.
Thank you. I actually feel, and I really do, and I suppose if I was listening to someone else doing what I'm doing 10 years ago, I'd think, oh my God, how much have they paid him to say all these things? I think everything you've just said, Derrick, is really true. I believe that because I did Vedic meditation, that moment when I thought, you know, Jesus, everything's going to go, you know, and everything going, I feel a responsibility to the guys that work for me, but also 3 of my children work here. So it was their, you know, they're like, and there was no point in panicking or flapping, which is where I think the meditation had helped greatly. It was, here's a situation, how am I going to deal with it? That was it. And it worked. And looking back on it, yeah, there was no panic, there was no flap, there was nothing. I mean, even if you ask my wife and kids, how was I during that stage? I was fine, absolutely fine. I didn't get bad tempered. I had a goal. I didn't know whether it would work or not, but that's what we were going to do. And, you know, we've come out of COVID, we're, you know, much stronger as a company. Yeah, no, I actually, you know, thank you for saying what you said, but I actually believe it. You know, as I say, if someone had said what I'm saying to me before, I'd have thought rubbish. You know, how can it be true? But it was true. I think it helped me. It grounded me. It made me think in a different way. That, you know, and I really believe that. And my comparison was COVID to that building situation when we moved. And if I'd have been like I was with the building, I think I'd have probably jumped off a building at that point, but I didn't. So.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Well, I don't know.
No, I know. I'm telling you, Tim. I know. Tim, you were chair of BAFTA, weren't you, between 1997 and 2000, and that's the British Academy of Film and Television Awards.
Yeah.
And you did something really profound in the scheduling of when the BAFTAs are awarded. Would you share with us the thinking
Yeah.
behind that. And also, I mean, I know you've credited Vedic meditation with a lot of your adaptability and your creativity, but and I think were always a creative and adaptable person, but Vedic meditation has solidified those characteristics, and you've recognized them, and they're perhaps now coming into play on a daily basis. But there have been moments in your life, so I understand, when you have been very creative, and I think your chairing of BAFTA was an extraordinary accomplishment. Would you like to share with us some of the things
Yeah,
you did?
When I took over BAFTA, it was in a terrible state. We had film and television awards together, and you'd have people like the unmentionable man that's being sued in the film industry, the mogul. I mean, actually, can I say Harvey Weinstein? The one thing I would say, what he did for the British film industry was absolutely incredible. What he did to get there was just, not acceptable. But he anyway. So BAFTA, I joined, and I remember a comment from right at the beginning when I joined. What does Tim know? This was from certain other people on the board. He's a businessman. Well, what BAFTA needed at that time was that sort of approach. And yes, I think you are right. I've always loved a problem. If that's being creative, then yeah, and I am creative. Why have the film and television awards together? If you're Steven Spielberg, are you really interested in the best documentary was awarded to Derrick on Vedic meditation, whatever? You couldn't actually give a toss, and yet you'd have to sit through this dreadful prize giving, and everybody only wants to know, well, did Steven Spielberg win? Whatever it might be. So we separated, or I started to separate the film and television awards. I got into grief from the powers that be at the time, which were like people like Dickie Attenborough and David Putnam. You can't separate them. It's going to crucify the television awards. And I felt, well, there's enough for each of them to stand on their own. And we went ahead and did it. And then I did something else, which was completely not establishment, was I said, why don't we get sponsorship? So you can imagine what I got hit with that. But anyway, we did get sponsorship. And at the time, Orange, this is 27 years ago, sponsored the Film Awards. EE, which is the equivalent of Orange, are still sponsoring the Film Awards. So I've been told, I think it's the longest running sponsorship in, if you call it the arts, in England. But anyway, so I did that. But where I would disagree with you, Anthony, I think, yes, if I have a problem, and I was always creative and everything else, there was the problem. How do I deal with it? I've always been like that, and I will deal with it. Boom, 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 boom. Where I think this was different was I didn't actually think about all the things that could go wrong with COVID. I actually was much more focused. So yeah, I've always been, my dad always used to say to me, all you do, Tim, is push buttons. Well, yeah, I push buttons and pulled strings, and that's why I'm still working, I suppose.
Yeah. But tell us about your BAFTA masterstroke with regards to the timing of the awards.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, the other thing was that the BAFTA awards were always after the Oscars. Well, quite frankly, in the world of, you can't compete with the Oscars. You cannot compete with the Oscars. They've got millions of dollars thrown at them. They're, whatever. They're broadcast all around the world, etc. And I thought, this is crazy. If we went before the Oscars, all the film people would actually be using BAFTA to promote, because all it is, I mean, I suppose what all these things are is they're promoting the sale of a film. That's what it is. But it happens to be something that's sexy and all of that. So we then decided we'd move the film awards before the Oscars. So that year, it was very difficult. I think that's the year I ended. But then what happened is the Oscars decided to move forward. So BAFTA, and it was all this. But as long as we go before the Oscars, you've got a good chance, because now all the stars turn up, whereas before, what do I need to go there for? I've already got my Oscar. So yeah, I mean, I think looking back on it, there were an awful lot of things that I was involved in with that, and yeah, it was enjoyable. But the difference, Anthony, is I can't really explain it. I mean, I think what Derrick's saying about the way it's probably the way my mind works, I suppose. I mean, I've got a terrible sewer brain. It just jumps from one thing to another. But it made me more grounded and probably more conscious of other people that were working. Like we were saying about the woke thing. You think about, I don't with woke, but I thought about, what's going to happen to all these people, and it was a completely different way of thinking for me.
You do think a lot about people, because I know you've got a fantastic apprenticeship scheme, and you're helping younger people enter the business and try and get them set up as costumiers.
Well, the one problem in the UK is that we've actually done it for quite a few years, but there's been no investment, if you like, in the infrastructure. And it's all fine that the world's gone mad and we've now got Blightywood instead of Hollywood, because we have. The Americans are coming over here. New Zealand's just lost Lord of the Rings because everything's very safe to do here. And I've forgotten completely where I'm going. What was the question?
Well, I've forgotten too. It's all right.
I've forgotten what you said.
Apprenticeship, I think we were talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
apprenticeship.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really important. What the problem with the film industry now is, it's great in the UK, it's so busy. There's no cameras left, there's no sound equipment left, there's no crew left, there's no this, there's no, when I say no costumes, when they make TV and film productions, they're like lemmings. Every period that you're working on, that becomes the period. It could be 1847, whatever it might be. And there hasn't been enough put into the infrastructure. The skill sets of the business. And I'm very concerned about that. And we've started that again. I mean, the other thing that I've been talking with Anthony about, and also from COVID, is that we've got quite involved in mental well-being for the people working here. And one of the things we've now got someone coming in to talk to staff about mental well-being, and I've been discussing with Anthony that I would like maybe to sort of introduce some of the staff to meditation, because apart from me, there are probably 3 or 4 people here that do meditation. I mean, either TM or through their religion, and I actually think it helped me. But we've got to have our staff meeting to tell them about the mental health before I can push through about Vedic meditation. And it's not something I want to hold a gun to their head to. No, Anthony and I have talked about this. But I think it's very important. I think that one of the huge problems with COVID is people's mental state. And I know we've been very lucky because we haven't got that many people working from home. There's one department, which is the fancy dress, which can work at home because it's all online. But actually, people coming back to work, they were very worried when you suddenly, after not working, you pulled them back in. But actually, I don't think anyone's got a problem with that. I think they're far better off being in an environment when they see people. Yes, we've got very strict rules, whatever, but they're socializing, and that's what human beings want. You want some social. I mean, this is fine. I mean, Zoom's driven me up the wall with all the Zoom meetings, and in fact, it was funny yesterday. I had to go to the was it the dentist? Oh yeah, I went to the dentist or something, and I had tracksuit bottoms on and a shirt like this. And the guy said to me, "Oh, you've got your Zoom outfit on." And for a minute, I couldn't work out what he was saying.
Tim, we're coming up. Sadly, we're coming up to the hour. But just talking about outfits and costumes, can we just end on the extraordinary story about Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan Kenobi outfit that he wore in Star Wars, because there's a lovely story attached to that.
Okay. We used to have a building in Shaftesbury Avenue, which was on 5 floors, and people could go in and hire fancy dress costumes. So certain stock from the main hire stock was put down to fancy dress. Now, in those days, one of the things that was popular were dressing up as a monk, okay? And they had a whole load of monk's robes. Anyway, one of the managers from here happened to went down to Shaftesbury Avenue, and he was going through the stock, and he suddenly sees this ropey brown robe. And he pulled it out and he said, I think this was Alec Guinness's. So we had it down here. Then we got the costume designer in from Star Wars who identified it. And probably for I don't know when Star Wars was made.
2005.
2005. So probably for 25 years, this costume had been being hired out to every Tom, Dick and Harry. There was no label in it saying Alec Guinness. And, you know, we suddenly decided, well, yeah, it was Alec Guinness's. We can't put it back into stock. We can't use it. I'm not a museum. Although I see today in LA, they're about to open a movie museum. So what are we going to do with it? So we put it up. We put it into an auction, which is, in fact, the auction was the reason that my youngest son is now working here, because that's what I got him in to work for, because he didn't want to come in here. Anyway, we have the auction, and I think it went for £100,000. And the interesting thing is, I think we have another one, because when you do films, if you have a leading actor, and there's a chance that things are going to get damaged, you make 2 or 3 of them. So I think we might have another one.
A few $100,000 there.
We've made 400 now.
Yeah. But do you know where they are amongst the 12 miles of racks of clothes?
I know where the one we think is original. It's not in the stock. It's somewhere very.
It's
safe.
at home.
Yeah, I wear it all the time. When I meditate.
We're in the bottom half. Yeah. To the dentist.
No, for meditation.
Meditation only. Fantastic. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you, and thank you so much for sharing your wonderful, rich stories, but also your insights into how Vedic meditation has underpinned your progress through these past tumultuous 24 months, and how you have managed to save your company, save your workforce. And I'm just delighted to hear that your car park is overflowing, and you business is booming and has never been as good as it is now. Long may it continue, and long may angels soar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thanks for sticking around till the end. Tim's frank contribution and amusing stories highlight how Vedic meditation can gently steer us towards the answers, even when facing insurmountable odds, and we heard how Vedic meditation has finessed his business acumen. His expansive answers show a man who's passionate about the business and his desire to help younger people enter the profession. The film industry in the UK is currently on a roll, and Angels is busier than ever. But you've missed your chance of wearing Obi-Wan Kenobi's cloak. Please share your thoughts and ideas with us with a direct message on our Instagram account. And for those of you who are not camera shy, please feel free to share a video with the hashtag #TheVedic Conversation. Goodbye.